What you're about to hear and see is the story of 3 spousal caregivers and their challenges and experiences with their spouse with a neurodegenerative disease. How does someone remain hopeful during these times? Everyone has a story.
You're just around the corner, so good to see you. We have 44 units that weren't all sold, but this is me. 44, you know, nice and close to the door. Yes. Well, I figured with my grandchildren, I needed to have something, because I have a locking patio door and a gate, and my grandkids could run in and out as needed.
Aww.
We lived in the same town, although never really knew each other in high school. I knew who he was because he dated most of my girlfriends. But we got married young. Our son born in 1975 and a second son in 1982. So we have 2 boys. Our goals for both of us in life was to raise godly men and that they would have godly wives. And we've been very blessed by that. Both of our kids are very strong in their faith, and their wives are too. He was the most widely requested teacher in his school. And in fact, his one principal commented that if I could have had 2 of you, I might have fulfilled half the requests. I couldn't figure out why he'd leave the house to be at school by 7:30 when he didn't have to be there by 8 o'clock. And I was to find out, because he didn't share this with me at first, I was to find out that he was going into his elementary school early. And he had a master key to his building, which was given to him by the maintenance man, because oftentimes he went very dedicated. He'd be in there sometimes on Sunday, taking care of stuff for Mondays. Anyway, he was going up and down the halls and unlocking every classroom door and praying over the classrooms. He was a man of great faith and great prayer. Even before he retired, we both retired in 2011, but he began to have a series of falls and saw characteristics in the way Byron carried himself, the way he walked, just his stature that frightened me. And so we pushed the doctor, we went to a neurologist, and our second neurologist said that they believed Byron had what was called progressive supranuclear palsy, which is a Parkinsonism. So we went home and did a lot of study and research on it, and it was kind of scary. 3.5 to 5 years life expectancy, and this whole list of things that could happen and go wrong. After we cried a lot, we just had to pray about, well, your life has gone from here down to here. It's probably about 4 years old now, but it was Byron up until his illness really started taking over. And one of the problems he had for the last 18 months, his mouth was open all the time and he couldn't smile anymore, but yet he tried to. And there were times he would break into smiles. I kept hearing afterwards at every card, every note that I got was Byron's beautiful smile. How people will always remember his smile. And I have to laugh because this is the same guy that didn't smile for one of our wedding pictures. Guys didn't smile back in the day.
We decided to get married the day after he graduated from medical school, but we made the decision only about a month before that. Our relationship was really always kind of rocky. We started out best friends and we always trusted each other. I think we always loved each other, but we had a lot of struggles. The way this is significant is that we found ourselves in Louisiana. We rented a house in DeRidder, which is a paper mill town. It was a real nowhere place. So I said, we might as well go to church tomorrow. There's nothing else to do in this lousy place. And that is the beginning of a very, very profound change in our religiosity and our relationship. But I had this moment sitting in a pew on a Sunday morning in church when all of a sudden I got it that I had sacred worth and that I was a child of God. And I don't remember the sermon presenting it that way. It was more like an aha moment. And I remember looking at Mark sitting there beside me and thinking, oh my gosh, so does he. And that changed everything for us. And we became faithful worshiping Christians and have been ever since. It's influenced everything about the way we live our lives, our parenting. In your 70s, if you don't have something like Parkinson's, you can kind of convince yourself maybe you're going to live another 20 years. But with Parkinson's, you know that's not going to be the case, that you're going to keep losing ability. You're going to lose, and then you're going to die. So it's, like I said, that existential question is the biggest. It's, we've got to face that. We've got to face our deaths. And that permeates everything we do, that awareness.
The last caregiver for this project I was put in touch with. They have a pretty powerful story. I'm excited to learn more and capture a glimpse into their lives.
We've known one another for 61 years and have been married for 51 of those years. Arlene and I met in junior high school and were high school and college sweethearts. After graduating from seminary, we moved to serve our first and eventually only full-time church ministry. Arlene immediately went to work and got deeply involved in my ministry, serving as a children's choir leader, a handbell ringer, a women's ensemble member, and a choir member, in addition to teaching 3rd and 4th grade Sunday school. After 3 years of serving the church, we had our first of 4 children. Arlene has been a wonderful wife and mother all these years. She has consistently been a quiet strength for our family. She was always supportive of me. We have grown to love one another more than either of us could ever have imagined. Then in 2014, we were confronted with one of our greatest challenges. Arlene was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Being at church for various activities are a part of who we are. So when Arlene became agitated and confused, and she felt like she needed to go someplace where she felt needed, wanted, and safe, that place was the church house. Since late January of 2016, Arlene has been a full-time resident of this care facility that is 25 miles away from our home. The chaplain at the home holds weekly Sunday morning worship services and a Bible study I attend with her and other residents from time to time. The hospice chaplain visits her regularly, reads scripture, and has prayer with her, to which she responds positively. We are convinced that these regular times of spiritual encouragement are very beneficial to her ongoing care. We normally go to visit Arlene 2 or 3 times a week as a family. My son and daughter go with me on Sundays after church. Because she isn't able to feed herself, my usual plan includes her lunchtime, so I try to go and feed her lunch and stay afterwards for a visit. Arlene is now in a wheelchair, unable to walk on her own. The osteoporosis has caused her back to have a sizable hump in her upper back, and she cannot remember names any longer, but her face says that she recognizes that she knows who we are. But through all of this, God has strengthened us and guided us as we loved and supported one another in good times and bad, as we trusted in Him.
What this project is teaching me is that the more a caregiver is relied on, the more strain and responsibility they might feel, which can really take a toll on their health. A lot of this commitment comes from the promises and the vows they made 30, 40, and 50 years back.
We are very independent from each other, have been for a long time, different schedules, different activities, and to all of a sudden have to coordinate those and have me be the only driver has been very hard for both of us.
I'd stopped going to my small group connection group, even though I know they were always there as support. But I think by the end of a day, I was so tired of just trying to care for him that I had to learn how to say no. I had friends that constantly said, Carol, you need to learn to say no.
Like tours we could take that we'll say involves cobblestone streets and uneven surfaces, things that it would just be hard for Mark. So my life is limited by that, by my being a caretaker.
I've discovered that the challenges of being a caregiver are in some measure determined by the stages of the disease. For me, meeting these challenges have been focused on what is best for Arlene. This is partially as a result of the vows we took before God when we got married.
I'm always kind of torn between wanting him to do everything he can for himself, but wanting to help him when he needs the help.
If he fell in a closet and ended up tangled in the hangers, that wasn't a fall because he didn't hit the floor. I think my frustration was his unwillingness to admit that there was really something wrong.
Hardest one for me, I think, is the slowness. Like we were walking with some friends from church after having had lunch together, and he can't keep up. He cannot walk fast enough. And he said, I wish you knew that I can't.
And his illness really became the main focus of our life for the last 5 years of our life. So I had to pretty much put my life on hold as far as what I wanted to do, because I knew his time was so short that I wanted him. I tried to help him make the best of what he had left.
One area I have become increasingly focused upon for Arlene is her safety. One example is how long Arlene would remain able to drive a car. At one point, the simple task of following became an issue when she encountered a red light while following me in her car. Instead of continuing on in my direction, she entered the highway and was nearly 15 miles out of town before I could locate her.
Room, even when he couldn't even say yes or no, I'd ask him yes or no questions, and when we were reduced to yes and no because he couldn't even answer them. Mine was sharp. He played cribbage, counting everything. Wow. Up until the last. He played Uno with his grandkids 4 days before he passed away.
We found one of the most difficult challenges, though, came as Arlene's demeanor and personality came to change. Before Alzheimer's, she was a caring, calm, loving, unassertive, even-tempered person. As the disease progressed, she began to exhibit at times, whether at home or away from home, volatile and aggressive behavior.
It's been kind of hard for him, but he will come to me now to help him with like his cuff buttons. He can usually manage most of his shirt buttons, but not his cuffs. His getting on his coat, getting in and out of the car, but those are things that are hard for him now.
But he was 5'10", I'm 5'2". And when it got to the physical aspect, when he couldn't get in or out of bed at night or anything like that, I think that was difficult. And that's about the time that we had to make the decision that he needed to go into a nursing facility. But again, we did it with prayer.
Care such as cooking and dressing, time management, housekeeping, bill paying, shopping, scheduling and attending appointments, medication, bathing, transportation, and more eventually became our sole responsibility, and a huge responsibility and a huge challenge.
I'm always trying to get him more sleep. I feel like sleep has been an issue our whole married life. He's always had disordered sleep. He's had sleep apnea since we were married. He uses a CPAP machine, but now he has all the other things, getting up to use the bathroom at night, and he just gets terrible sleep.
we met with a doctor here in town, a neurologist after the fall, and his first comment to us was, oh, Byron has PSP. He said, this is a 6-minute meeting. He said, you're going to need to think about a feeding tube. And we said, feeding tube? What are we talking about, a feeding tube? Well, he'll lose the ability to swallow, and he said, you'll need to decide whether or not you want a feeding tube or not. And we were just kind of like, jaws dropped.
Her choice of language changed, and periodically physically abusive behavior surfaced. Those emotions and behaviors were completely opposite of her personalities.
And then we sat down, talked about it, we prayed about it, and Byron said, that is not what I want. I don't want a feeding tube. He said, when I get to that point in my life, and I totally agreed with him, I don't want my life to be prolonged. He said, I have a heavenly home I'm going to. He said, I know that upon my death, my faith teaches me that I'm going to heaven. And he said, I believe that strongly. And a lot of our decisions were made on that. Our faith helped us so much through a lot of prayer. And I honestly believe God talks to you. If your eyes are open to seeing what He's put in front of you, the answer's there oftentimes.
I would say one of the most important things I do for myself to keep myself healthy is my morning prayer time. And my daughter says that I shouldn't just call it prayer time, that kind of misrepresents it. It is time that I do always read some scripture in my Bible. My prayer is more the posture of opening my hands and kind of being available to what I think of as God's directing. These are our two daughters, but they're church directory pictures. This little girl is 7 now, but we haven't come out with a new directory yet. So they have two more now.
After the completion of one interview, one spouse shared that this experience was one of the only times they paused, reflected, and responded to meaningful events that had taken place. In a sense, they said it was very therapeutic.
Too, that I just had to cry out. I mean, I just cried out, Lord, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? And then it's just like I would feel after a short period of time, I would just feel this sense of relief, like, don't worry about it. I've got it covered. And I guess for me, that was the greatest thing, just to know that there was someone beside me, someone behind me, someone watching over me. And again, telling me that what we were doing was correct. There was sometimes, what I can say, it's a sense of relief that what the decisions that we made, as tough as they may be, that they were the correct decisions. We never looked back. Both of us, and even myself, we never looked back. We never questioned decisions that we made. Because we went into them with faith.
What I'm learning is their hope extends much further beyond this life, and in that, they find comfort.
The hope we have in the future that God has for us both is founded on our faith in Him and His love for us. It is the same love that He has demonstrated to us and thousands of others like us over and over again.
He's got sacred worth. He's a child of God. I feel like Mark deserves, I am uniquely positioned to be the one to help him and to help him continue to live a life as full and happy as he can have.
This whole process, when Byron's illness came about, I would say to make it easier, but in a way it did.
I am confident in knowing that one day, after she leaves us, she will be whole again in the presence of our God, who loves her even more than we do.
We knew what was going to happen afterwards when he passed away. We knew, because God promised that there was going to be life after.
She will be whole again in the presence of our God, who loves her even more than we do.
And I believe that everybody with whom I've ever interacted is sort of my responsibility to treat with the sacred worth they have.
That caregiver can be one of the most important things in a person with a disability or a debilitating disease. The way they see life and the way they value themselves.